How many of you are cold? Because I heard, who is cold? There's a few cold. Bill, are you serious? Okay. Heard many comments this morning. Pastor, we're cold. We're cold, we're cold, we're cold. I don't feel so cold right now. So I hope you're warm. This is your captain speaking. We're about to take off. Not expecting any turbulence along the way. Probably leaving the gate a little later than normal. Should arrive at our destination sometime the side of lunch. For the temperature right before the end of the sermon is about the same as it is now. All right. I have no idea what I'm saying. I'm just talking as I move this. You probably are thinking the same thing. What is he saying? I'm also trying to crunch down my last Vicks. All right. So ironically enough, it is Health Ministry Sabbath in the North American Division. And not every church across the United States and Canada, Bermuda, and a bunch of those islands we inherited in our division off in the ocean somewhere. Not everyone will be focusing on health ministries today, but a lot of our churches across our division will be focusing on health. And specifically this year, the chosen emphasis is on mental health, how to maximize your brain potential. So our neighbors, the Michigan Conference, were kind enough to make available a presentation, a brand new presentation, or a presentation from a brand new series by Lifestyle Matters called Fit and Free. And for this Health Ministries Sabbath at no cost to churches across our division, I said, here's one of these presentations that will normally you would have to buy, but we'll allow you to use for this Sabbath. So we appreciate our brothers and sisters in Michigan for letting us take part in this. So these brains of ours, did you bring your brain today? Brent didn't. That's troubling. Hopefully you don't take it out at night like your teeth or your glasses or whatever. Remember to plug it in like your phone. But these brains of ours, can they change? Yeah? Can they improve all through life or just when you're in school? That's what we want to look at today. Look at our brains. And so this particular session is called Engineered for Success. This is one presentation in a whole track of this Fit and Free series on building a better brain. Excuse me. It was put together by Vicki Griffin and Evelyn Kissinger. So we thank them for their work on this. So in this session, we want to talk about, we worship here today, is to see how your brain is designed for some important things, for renewal, for restoration, and for repair. Renewal, restoration, and repair. So let's begin by taking a look at a superstorm that probably many of us will remember, especially if you've lived in North America in the last decade. You might even vividly remember, if you happen to have been in the southern part of the States, a storm called Katrina. You remember that one? Yeah, there's probably a lot of people down in the southern states who won't ever forget that name, Katrina. Probably not high on the list of, what they want to name their little girls after what they went through. But Katrina was the name of the second strongest hurricane in United States history. On August 23, 2005, it slammed into New Orleans, Louisiana, and several other states with winds up to 174 miles per hour. The storm surge was 20 feet high. We heard in Sabbath school about some of what it was like in the Philippines. New Orleans, 20 feet high. 80% of the city of New Orleans was underwater. 80%. It affected nearly 15 million people, and sadly, almost 2,000 people were killed in that storm. The damage to the infrastructure was estimated at $75 billion, which is more money than I can imagine. And that earned Katrina the title of the costliest hurricane in U.S. history. So a storm-ravaged city like Katrina has at least two major challenges when something that big happens. One is you have damaged infrastructure, such as communication and transportation systems. Those get messed up. And then also weakened defense systems to protect against danger. Excuse me. So summarizing the condition, you have a broken city, you've got three things. You've got damaged infrastructure, you've got weakened defenses, and we'll get to the third one on the next slide. So when you have a city like this that's gone through something like that, it's lost its synchrony, it's lost its vitality, got broken communication systems, broken transportation systems, and what that does is it just shuts down the city's normal operations. With weakened defenses, the city is especially vulnerable to things like violence and vandalism. It has fewer inner resources and little power to protect itself. One of our good friends, Gwen Bader, led a mission trip down to New Orleans after that storm, and some of the pictures she brought back and some of the stories she told of what people had been through and some of the good stories of what people do in a time of crisis and some of the very bad and sad stories of how people take advantage of a time of crisis. But what happens is a broken city is left somewhat defenseless. As well, broken city has to deal with something else, and that is that it has ceased normal function and it switches over into survival mode. All the plans for development and growth, city councils are always planning to do things with the city. Those things get shelved, and the city switches into this survival mode. Have you ever had times in your life when you felt like you were in survival mode? Yeah? No? Right now? Hopefully not. I mean, I have, right? We probably all have. Times when you're just like, what is it for me? I hope I can make it through Sabbath. I can just make it to Saturday night. I will go on living. You just make it to the end of this work day. I can just make it through this next week or this next week. Exams that I have coming up. This big project I have at work. If I can just make it through my mother-in-law's visit, whatever the case might be, I'll be okay. Survival mode. That wasn't very nice, was it? I have a good mother-in-law. When a storm hits, every sector of the city is affected. It's in need of comprehensive renewal, restoration, and repair. Excuse me. As it points out in Romans 1:20, God often uses the things that we can see. He uses the things we can see to help us understand the things that we cannot see, to teach us some biblical truths. And so the Bible provides some powerful evidence for us, evidence of our need for God, evidence of His amazing love for humanity, and also of His plan for restoration for us of body, mind, and spirit. And so notice this vivid comparison here of a city like we talked about, a city like New Orleans that was devastated and ruined. Look at how it's compared here with mankind, with people in a broken condition. From Proverbs 25, verse 28, a person without self-control is like a city that is broken down and without walls. So here the Bible writer uses a literal city to describe a person's mental state. So what kind of challenges are there that can hinder healthy brain function? We want to talk about mental health and how to maximize our brain potential. What are the things that can hinder that can make it hard for that to happen? That broken city can powerfully illustrate the broken brain, a brain that may have been broken down over time by things like stress, things like depression, things like the bad habits that can come into our lives, and things like addictions. A brain that has been ravaged by these things as well as by negative thinking is a brain then, just like a city, that is in need of renewal and restoration and repair. So there are three major areas that influence and impact both your brain and your body health. Three main things that have an impact on our health. So here they are. One is our genes, all right, not the comfortable pants or the too tight pants you put on, but the things inside. Second one is our environment. And the third one is our choices. So let's talk about these, the genes. You cannot change your gene structure. You can change your genes, but you can't change your genes, on the inside. But what's interesting is you can change their function and activity, that can actually be influenced. You can't change your gene structure, but you can change how they work dramatically by things like your diet and lifestyle and exercise. And even the way you think changes how your gene structure functions. So there's that one element. Second, whoops, I don't know why I went back there. Environment. Your environment, your internal environment, is how you think. Your external environment is, of course, what surrounds you. You don't have complete control over what surrounds you, but you have some control. So you can build an internal and an external environment that can help you create a powerful brain advantage. You can't control everything around you, but there's a lot of things you can control that can make it more likely for you to have good mental health. Then the third one is choice. Every choice that you make, every single day, and even how you think, those things actually affect your brain. It's not just passing, I had a thought, it doesn't matter. It actually has an impact on your brain. So hereditary tendencies, environmental influences, and poor choices, any or all of those factors can break down the brain's resources and defenses, and then it is left broken and powerless. And that means that for us, every day that we're alive, every day that we're breathing, we're presented with opportunities to make choices that will influence the health of our brain and even how your genes function. Every choice that improves the health of your brain also has an added benefit. It improves the health of your body as well. Healthy brain, healthy body can go together. Rebuilding a broken city requires a plan. So does rebuilding a broken brain. It doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by coincidence. Just one day, everything's okay. But the good news is, your brain, my brain, is engineered for renewal and restoration and repair. It's actually set up to be able to get better and to get stronger. Your brain is capable of physical, mental, and emotional improvement. Your brain is capable of spiritual renewal. That's a pretty cool thing that God made us that way. And the great news is that means that you can move forward and you can continue going forward, whether your brain has maybe been hit by a big storm, a storm of stress or a storm of depression or negativity or bad habits. Maybe you've been through so much, you can still improve and go forward. And even if you haven't experienced or faced some kind of debilitating storm to your mental health in life, but if you just simply want your brain and your body health to be better, there's some good news that we can take in today by looking at some of these principles and some of these promises from God. Dr. Norman Doidge, a psychiatrist and author of the book, The Brain That Changes Itself, has this to say about the changing nature of our brains. He said, the brain is a far more open system than we ever imagined. And nature, or I might even want to insert for him and God, has given us a brain that survives in a changing world. How? Interesting. By changing itself. Isn't that neat? The brain is constantly reshaping itself according to what it learns, and this is called plasticity. Plasticity is a term neuroscientists use to describe the remarkable ability of the brain to adapt and change. So people get plastic surgery, right? So my nose looks better, or I have less wrinkles, or whatever. We can try to, that's kind of hard, right? You can stand in the mirror and you can move all kinds of stuff, but I don't know about you, but it just goes right back where it was, right? Hard to do, right? To change the outside. But our brain actually has the ability to actually literally change. And what we experience and what we think and how we give it an opportunity, it's easier. Maybe not easier. Well, it is easier. It is easier to change it. That's pretty cool. Plasticity. Someone says, you have a plastic brain, you can be, that's right. I sure do, and it's good. Notice a statement from Dr. John Rady, a neuropsychiatrist, author from Harvard University, in his book, User's Guide to the Brain. That might be a good book, some of us to look at. It says, by viewing the brain as a muscle that can be weakened or strengthened, look at that brain there, pumping the iron, a strong brain. we can exercise our ability to determine who we become. That means that behavioral changes, lifestyle changes, choices that we make can actually build a better brain. It can build better habits, it can build better health, a better life, and not just for temporary, but for good. So how do you heal a broken brain? If your mental health is not what you would wish it to be, you've been through a lot of storms in life. When they look at this area, they suggest 5 key areas to consider in healing broken brain. One is assessment. Second one is environment. Third one is, lifestyle. Fourth one is connections, a very interesting one we're going to look at. And the last one is managing stress. And notice that they're not all separate from each other. They're overlapping and interconnected. So let's look at these. Assessment. It's always important when you're talking about health matters to work closely with your physician, with your health care provider. So yes, can we have an impact on our health? Definitely. Lifestyle changes may reduce or even in some cases eliminate the need for certain medications over time. But sometimes as Christians, some of us struggle with this idea that it's okay to use medicine or medical procedures when they're needed. In fact, in some cases they are essential. I invited Dr. Handysides, who was here for our 60th anniversary, who's retired now as the General Conference Health Ministries Director. We invited him to be here this afternoon for our panel discussion because he's retired in Peterborough, so we thought it's not too far, he could come and be here. But he's retired in Peterborough in the summer, and he's retired in Florida in the winter. So he's not going to be here, but he sent a message to me when I'd given that invitation, and he wished us well and God's blessing and said he was glad we were doing this. But it's interesting to me that given his perspective and years and the role he was in, he said, I hope that after you have this mental health Sabbath, that the message that comes out isn't a message that if you just eat a certain thing or don't eat a certain thing, that will take care of all of the issues that have to do with mental health or mental illness. He was concerned because he hears that. And it's that call for balance, to recognize that this is a multi-pronged thing and we need to make use of what's available. Environment, the internal environment of how you think, the external environment of what you surround yourself in, the environment in which you put yourself. These are critical for achieving and maintaining positive change in our mental health. And of course, lifestyle. This isn't really a news flash to anybody. In this day and age, we hear all the time about how lifestyle can affect our health. Lifestyle choices are the foundation of mental, physical, and spiritual health. And managing stress. Does anybody have any stress? Yeah? Only 3 in the second service. There was 10 of us in the first service that had stress. I'm going to ask the rest of you who have peaceful, blissful lives to pray for the 3 of us, that we can attain your status in life. It's real, right? And some stress is good. If we don't have any stress, life has no meaning. But too much stress, not so good. So we need practical strategies to tap into when we're confronting those life challenges and stress. And this is an interesting one, connections. Your associations and your interests have a profound effect on shaping your values and your goals. That means that as a Christian, knowing that God's power and guidance are available to give courage and power for your life journey is actually a powerful thing. Sometimes people say, Christianity, religion, that's just for weak people, people that don't have their lives together, people that need some crutch to help them somehow manage. But the truth is, connections, including a connection with God, yes, they can help us when they're weak, but they're also part of what make us strong. Not just something for weak, inept, incapable people. It's something for the healthy and the vibrant as well. How important are positive social ties? How important are things such as family activities and family gatherings, family day weekend, getting together with friends, participating in special religious or community or workplace activities? How important is it to be with people sometimes and be in these positive interactions? Well, look at this. A review of 148 studies on social ties found that people with strong social relationships were 50%, that's quite a bit, 50% less likely to die early than people without such support. These people are happy to live longer, right? Isn't that amazing? Just social connections. It's where the church can help, right? The church provides an opportunity to have some positive social connections. They provide an opportunity to check in with each other, exchange ideas, perhaps lend a supportive ear or shoulder. A lack of social relationships was equivalent, a study found, to smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. So if you don't like people, you really don't like people, just as soon never see another person, it's bad for your health. You're going to have to figure out a way, or you should figure out a way to somehow, in some setting, find some positive interaction with people because it will actually help you live longer. Quiet time is great, but a relative lack of social ties is associated with depression, associated with later life cognitive decline, as well as with increased mortality. In other words, you die more likely to die earlier. One study which examined data from more than 309,000 people, so this isn't, 10 people said that this was helpful to me. This is 309,000 people, found that a lack of strong relationships increased the risk of premature death from all causes by 50%. This is an important factor. That meant that the effect on mortality risk was roughly comparable to smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day, and it was a greater factor than things like obesity or physical inactivity. Many of us would not smoke 1 cigarette a day, right? We'd never do that because it's not good for our health, much less 15. But do we think about the fact that positive social interaction can be just as influential on our health? Isn't that interesting? See, it isn't. The monastic, I have to teach for the School of Evangelism Church History, so I've been reviewing that. And the whole monastic movement, where some of the people in Christianity said, there's corruption in the church and we need to go off by ourselves and just be with God. The monks, be with God and just study and have it quiet and peaceful and no evil influences and just develop in our spiritual life. It's interesting that the monastic movement started out kind of on its own, but very quickly they figured out, this is kind of lonely. And so they built monasteries and they came together and they still kind of stayed quiet and stuff, but they figured out that it worked a lot better if they were together instead of all being off with God by themselves. So even the order that called for being away figured out it's better when we do it together. They figured out something that's real. Social relationships. The author of this study, or the leader of this study from Brigham Young University, said, I certainly don't want to downplay these other risk factors, obesity, inactivity, things like that, because of course they are very important. But we need to start taking social relationships just as seriously. Social connections like these not only give us pleasure, they should give us pleasure, but they also influence our long-term health in ways every bit as powerful as things like getting adequate sleep, getting a good diet, and not smoking. So when you think about being healthy, get enough sleep, have water, all of that stuff, but also get with some people. If you hate people, you're going to die. So you need to get some way to like people. Dozens of studies have shown that people who have satisfying relationships with family, friends, and their community are happier, they have fewer health problems, and they live longer. And they're glad they live longer. They don't suffer through life. They enjoy life. Social relationships, connections with other people. But there's also an aspect of our connection with God. Growing research has demonstrated a link between spiritual well-being and better health. Good to be a part of God's family. Spiritual well-being is at the center of a healthy lifestyle, or it should be. Creating a connection with God improves mental, physical, and spiritual health. Right? So, it's of benefit to us to be connected with one another and to be connected with God. Why are you sitting here today? Because you could stay home and watch 3ABN and Hope and ACN and ATN and all kinds of letters, You could be in your pajamas and your slippers, all comfy, and you could hear a much better sermon and a better looking pastor, and you could hear much better music, and you could just have a wonderful experience with God and your television or your device. But there's something valuable about us being together as a community of people, especially when we have the added benefit of having a connection with God. That's good for our health, good for our brain. Occasionally it's stressful to our brain, but generally it's good for our brain, right? Being with God's people. Maybe put some perspective on it, hopefully. Close relationship with God is not only linked to a healthier immune system, to reduced risk for depression and addictions, but it's also kind of remarkable that they've done studies that show that having a spiritual part of you, a spiritual well-being, actually has heart health benefits such as these: lower blood pressure, lower inflammation, lower cholesterol. I'm hoping that that's going to kick in for me, and lower fasting blood sugar. Pretty cool, right? Connect with God and it will help you with your heart, not just spiritually, but actually, literally, physically. Psalm 139, psalmist says, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. We were designed for a relationship with God. Remember what it said in Genesis 1:27? Then God created man in his own image. How did he do that? How are we in his image? Well, you and I have been given intellect to be able to even reason about our existence. You know, we do have a brain, thank God, that can think. We've been given the capacity to know him, to know something about him. And we have been given the ability to experience his love, and then when we experience, share it with other people. We were designed for these connections. God knows all about you. He knows where you are, he knows what you're thinking, he knows what you need. Psalm 139 says, O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You understand my thoughts from afar. You keep watch over my steps in my sleep and have knowledge of all my ways. That can be kind of disconcerting. That can also be very encouraging, right? God knows. He knows what you and I need. He knows what's going on. God keeps watch over you in every condition, in every situation of your life. Later on in the psalm, it says, how precious are your thoughts to me, O God. How vast is the sum of them. If I would count them, they are more in number than the grains of sand. It means you are in the heart of God continually. Pretty amazing. You can achieve growth. You can achieve change. You can achieve success because God's power and God's promises and God's plan are with you, available to you. 3 P's, his power, his promises, his plan. Remind ourselves of those. God's power is for you. Colossians 1:11, that you may be strengthened in every kind of strength by the might of his glory for every kind of patience and fortitude with good cheer. So he invites you to come to him for the patience and the perseverance and the power to help you along life's journey. It's good to have help like that, right? Yeah. God's power, God's promises are for you. Remember this one, Isaiah 40:31? Those who wait for the Lord, they will have new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not be weary. They will walk and not faint. God's promising here to personally guide and strengthen and sustain you. That should be good for us. That should help encourage us. His power, his promises, and his plan. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. Plans for your welfare and not for evil. To give you a future and a hope. God cares about you and he cares about me. He cares about our welfare. He has a plan and he wants you to be able to walk in hope. Dr. Deutsch in The Brain That Changes Itself states this: the idea that the brain is like a muscle that grows with exercise is not just a metaphor. It's not just a nice idea, oh, the brain can get stronger. It really, literally, actually can grow and develop in positive ways. Experiences, thoughts, actions, and emotions actually change the structure of our brains. What you experienced, it actually changes what goes on in there. What you think, the emotions that you feel, what you do, how you act. This isn't all outside stuff that's apart from our brain. It all has an actual, literal effect on our brain. Which means what we do and what we think, and even how we choose to feel. And even what experiences we allow ourselves to be a part of have an impact. Your brain changes with your thoughts and your emotions. And that's where knowing that you are created by God, knowing that God personally is watching over you, those are things that really, literally, truly can help heal and restore and renew a broken brain. Let me close with these words from Psalm 73, reminding us that we can trust in God. The psalmist says, "You hold me by my right hand. You will guide me with your counsel." Isn't it great that our brains were created the way they were by God? Isn't God, our creator, amazing? Could have just made us brainless. We probably would have, who knows what we would do. I think I see some of those people driving down the street. Not really. Isn't it? God has given us these brains, and we can do something with them, and we can do something about it, and we can help them be more healthy. And they actually, literally respond to things like a healthy diet, and they respond to exercise, and they respond to social connections. And our brains actually respond to a relationship with God through His Word. Actually makes a change in our brain and in our mental health. Isn't that pretty cool? Isn't that amazing? What a God we have. Give us brains like that. Would you like to experience some of those wonderful changes in your life? Would you like to? We can. We can. Because God has given us a brain that can get better and better. We're going to sing a closing hymn that probably many of you aren't familiar with, but it talks about health, and it talks about using our brains to serve God. It's number 642. I invite you to stand. We're going to sing this together. Pay attention to the words. Think about them as we sing.